Welcome back to the Suspense Squad, where authors interview authors. And tonight we are so excited to have Elizabeth Goddard joining us. Yay!
So glad to be here.
Elizabeth is the author of so many books. We were just talking about that. This is her 7th book with Revell that she's just released called Cold Light of Day. Hold up your cover for us. It's gorgeous.
So good.
And read the back cover copy for us.
All right. Police Chief Autumn Long is fighting to keep her job in the quiet Alaska town of Shadow Gap when an unexpected string of criminal activity leaves her with a wounded officer, unexplained murders, and an attack on her own father. Despite her mistrust of outsiders, she turns to Greer Brenner, a newcomer who seems to have the skills and training Autumn needs to face this threat to her community. Greer is in Alaska for the same reason many others are, to disappear. And when Chief Long enlists his help, he emerges from the shadows and proves his mettle, but his presence in her life could be a deadly trap for them both. If his secret is exposed, all will be lost, and he's not sure even Autumn could save him.
Oh, it sounds so good. This is the first one in a new series, right? It's called Missing in Alaska. It's just, it sounds amazing. So we are so excited to talk to you about that. And so we have some questions for you. And we are going to start with Loretta.
Hey, Elizabeth. I've seen you at conferences, but I've never actually met you. So I'm glad to meet you here.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Yes.
Yeah. And my question for you tonight is, how or why did you start writing? I mean, what did you feel a call to write, or just how did that happen?
That is actually a pretty long story, of course, that I can't share the whole thing here because short time, but I actually did a presentation for a group of people, and it took me like an hour to tell that story. But it started from the beginning. Like I was 8 years old when my mom planted the seed, I guess, in me. She loved to read. And so therefore I love to read, but I'd love to write too, as it turned out. And so she had told me that she was sending something I had written into a publisher, and I never heard back from that. So I always thought that she just didn't send it. But recently I decided, maybe it got rejected and she didn't want to tell me, but so, she just kind of planted that seed. So that was always kind of like, so it's just always been inside of me to want to write. I didn't really pursue any of that until, I went through, I got my degree in computer science, and I went through my 20s getting married and having children and all of that. But it wasn't until I was 30 that I stayed home with my first child. And I thought, maybe it's now the time I can maybe look into writing, because, I still love to read, and it was still there, that desire. But I just, as Rachel started getting older, she's 1, 2, 3 years old, and I was trying to write, I thought, gosh, what if I waste 5 years of my life trying to write a novel that never gets published? I will have wasted that time. So fast forward 5 years, and it turns out I did waste the time by not writing. Anyway, so it was 2001 that over the last several years, the Lord had just been nudging me. You know how he does. You get these Bible verses, or people say the weirdest things to you, and just random. And you're like, I just kept feeling like he was nudging me towards writing. And so I got this Bible devotional called Write His Answer by Marlene Bagnall. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but and I signed up to meet with Diane Mills at ACW. It's American Christian Writers. I don't know if they still do conferences, but that was my first conference. And so I signed up to meet with her, and I was going to ask her, am I called to write? Can you tell me? But by the time I got there, I just knew, I already knew, and I sat down, and then we just kind of connected and kind of confirmed that, yes, you're called to write. So it's just kind of been with me for a long time, but it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I just began pursuing that. And I signed up for a critique group at ACFW. Back then it was called American Christian Romance Writers. And it was for a few years later that they changed it to ACFW. But and so I was one of the early members of that group, if you guys are familiar with that group. So just started going to conferences every year and networking. And so that's kind of where it all began.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing.
I love that another author too was able to kind of help you settle yourself.
Oh yeah. Right. And encourage me. And then, along the way, and you guys, I'm sure will agree with this, but it is all the people that I've met on the journey and all of my best friends. We have been in this together for 20 years and just, we talk every day, and we have our virtual offices and they've been there to encourage me. And when I read a bad review, I don't know if you go to your friends and they're like, oh, but look at all the good ones, or, they just really encourage me. We do this back and forth, and I couldn't have been on this journey without them. So that is really the most important element of, I think, writing, is just the people you meet along the way. Right.
Well, that kind of leads us into Patty's question. So Patty, I'll let you go ahead and ask your question because it's along those same lines.
Well, yeah. So my question is, as you just mentioned, so who is the person that's giving you the most inspiration?
Well, as I mentioned my mom earlier, she inspired me in the biggest way, really planting that seed. But I can't say there's really one person. I was thinking about this question. It's just all of the writers along the way. When I was in my teen years, I read a lot of Victoria Holt, Phyllis Whitney, Rebecca Du Maurier, and the Bronte sisters, Gothic romance novels. And so I think that kind of really fed into what I write now. I don't write the Gothic scene really, but I love romantic suspense. And so these are really the pioneers of that. So, and then in my 20s, I was reading Bodie Taney's World War II novels. And that really was my first foray into Christian fiction. And so all of these people along the way really, big influence on me. I remember walking into a Christian bookstore and, kind of thinking about the writing thing. And I picked up a Linda Windsor, I believe is her name, Mayor. I don't know how to pronounce it. It was, anyway, there was a pamphlet that came with it that she told the story about how she was called to write and how she began her journey. And I just thought, I'm going to do this. I got to do this. So, it's a multiple people along the way, just, shifts and changes with the different people that influence you. And right now I have so many writing friends that are just doing phenomenal novels and, I'll read something they've written. I'm like, oh, I have got to go back and rewrite my chapter. That was, whatever, this mind just really stinks. I got to go back and, just make it as good as that. And then if I get stuck in my story, all it takes is to read. I'll just read somebody else's story and then I'll just feel the inspiration all over again. So
I love that you said Victoria Holt. She's one of my favorites. And I think I agree with you when you said they were kind of the pioneers of romantic suspense, because she would always have like this little mysterious thread through her romance novels. And that was the part I loved in her book. That
I love those Gothic romances.
Yes,
they were the best.
With
I
the
love Phyllis Whitney.
The gentleman and the dancer.
Phyllis Whitney. Willow Davis Roberts was one of my favorites.
So good.
And what I think is cool too is that, as you go along and as you've progressed, I'm sure you have been an inspiration to other authors who are just getting started too. And I think that's one of the coolest things about it.
I hope so. I do love to inspire people. And I think that's really what we have to do is give back. If we're on the journey, then we have to at some point give back and inspire other people and encourage them.
Yeah. How about, let's see, Virginia has a question for you.
Okay, so my question is, we all know that you write a lot of books, as we talked about earlier. I just really want you to talk about your process. How do you start to finish your day to day, that kind of thing? Yeah.
Oh boy, it's really chaotic and messy. It's funny because I have talked recently with some of my other writing friends that we've been on the journey, for 20 years, as I mentioned, and we were like, back when we weren't published, we're like dreaming of the writing life, right? And so now we're there and we're like, it's not anything like we imagined or dreamed it to be. It's you just picture somebody sitting at their computer all day long and quiet or walking the beach, or it's just life. It's so chaotic around us that I don't know if it's the times have changed. Maybe it was this way many years ago, but it's just, I might have a set plan where I want to get up and write in the morning, or, something happens, I mean, this happens in your lives too, I'm sure, just to throw your day off. So I have to manage my writing all around that. I try different things. Like I want to write in a chunk. I'm going to block off, 4 hours to try to get as much as I can get written, but it doesn't really work that way because, as you probably know, you can have the time to write, but you also have to have the mental and emotional energy to do it. You can't just sit there and then write. So it's really tough. Anyway, like today, for instance, or on my calendar, I know that I need to write. Need to write on my Missing Alaska book 3, and I'm struggling to keep up. But hey, if you read my newsletter, you know that I'm struggling to keep up. So I will have to do some marathon writing days, what I call marathon writing. And that's where I just sit there and I just tell myself, and I pray, God, please, to write a huge amount of words. But if I were to have my perfect writing day, and once in a while that happens, I write a scene and then I go walk on the treadmill. I write a scene and then I go do some laundry. I write a scene and then I, just back and forth. And at the end of the day, gosh, I've gotten all this stuff done and I've written a lot of words, but that doesn't always happen. I wasn't sure if you were also asking about how I write. Like, do I write by the seat of my pants, or do I plot, or is that part of the question too, or just okay. All right. Yeah. That when I first started writing for Heart Song and Love Inspired Suspense, of course, they require a synopsis. Heart Song Presents required a chapter synopsis. So I still have to do that for Love Inspired Suspense. I write out everything that's going to happen. But those books are pretty short and not really much of a subplot. So, I give my publisher what they need. But for the Revell novels, I want my plot to be really complicated. I want my characters to be very complex, and I can't really know that ahead of time. I have to dive into the story and start living in that world and see everything through my character's eyes. And I may start with, some loose plot lines. Everything is loose, and the characters, even what they do and who they are loose. And I just kind of start writing that story and developing everything as I go. So it's kind of like on the spectrum of pantsing and plotting, kind of back and forth, depending on the book, I'll be more one way or more the other way. But it is a painful process. I won't lie to you about that, because, you have a deadline. And so I can't be struggling. What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? So, and I do struggle, but I just, so far I've been able to make it work, make it happen. So.
Do you have trouble switching from LIS mentality to the bigger book mentality?
Well, the Love, after writing the longer books, the Love Inspired stories are easier for me to write. I mean, it just kind of makes sense, right? You're like, oh, this is easier for me to write. I know that there's been times when I've written on the same days. I write one in the morning and then the other in the afternoon. And then people have asked, how do you keep your characters straight? And I'm like, who said I keep my characters straight? I mean, there's been a time I was rereading something. I'm like, oh, what are you doing in this story? You're in the other story.
That happens today.
That's what editing is for. But, and I think, the more books I write and the older I get, it is getting harder to keep that all separate. And then I've got grandchildren and all these, all this extra stuff. It's like, you think that when your kids are grown, that it's going to get easier. And it actually is more complicated now than it was when they were babies. I don't ask me why.
I was going to ask you about how you kept all your characters straight. So it's good to know that you don't. They find their way wherever there's going to be. So.
For the most part, I do, but I'm going to, it's happened where I've mixed them up. That's what editing's for, right?
That's right. I had a proofreader today tell
Amen.
me, who's Tomas? And I was like, oh crap, he's in another book. He's not supposed to be.
Snuck his way onto them.
Yeah, I'm glad she caught it because she was the last one to look at the book and I hadn't caught it. And 2 editors before I had caught it. So
isn't it amazing how many people have to read something and there's still errors, there's still typos, it's just crazy.
I can't believe it. What we don't see.
Yeah, I think our brains fix. I know I am terrible at editing because you've seen those little puzzles on Facebook or whatever. If you can read this, you're smart, whatever. But your brain fixes stuff. It does that to your manuscript too. It just fills in the words and puts in the extra words that they're missing. And so it just makes it really hard to edit.
Okay, so Darlene has our final question today.
Okay. So Elizabeth, tell me, who is your favorite character and why?
So I'm going to talk about Cold Light of Day. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but I love my character Greer Brenner. If any of you guys are reading that, he's the hero. And I love him because he is an enigma for most of the story. He's mysterious, and I had a lot of fun trying to pull that off. I wasn't sure if I could. I wasn't sure if my editor would say, oh no, we got to tell the readers who he is and what he's doing up earlier, but she let me push it really far. Now I have the issue where, okay, can I pull this off again? Can I create another hero that I really like or that readers are really going to love? So that's always the bane of our existence, right? Can we write, is the next book going to be as good as the one we just turned in? So
have any characters ever surprised you or in any of
oh yeah, they do all the time. And actually Greer, I didn't know him either. So that was part of it. I'm just writing it. He's a hero and I'm trying to figure out who he is. I didn't know who he was until he revealed himself. So when I said that, I have I hold on loosely, I really mean it, because I don't really know a lot. And just till I start kind of being in the story and living through my character's eyes. And it's kind of a scary way to write. If you don't know what's going to happen ahead of time, it's a little bit scary, but at the same time, I think that makes it more fun for the readers on the other side, because if I don't know what's going to happen and I don't know this stuff, then the reader's not going to be able to figure it out either. So I think it's a win-win.
We've got some big fans of seat of the pants writing in here. I'm going to ask you this. Do you think if you had started out not writing for Love Inspired Suspense and having to do all of that structural type of thing, that you could do what you're doing with your Revell characters?
I think that writing for Love Inspired Suspense has taught me how to write. Taught me how to write romantic suspense. And I've talked to other authors that are writing for, trade publishers that spent, wrote many books for Love Inspired. I think that they're the training ground, really. And I don't think, it was always my dream to write for trade. I don't think that I was ready, really. I'm glad that indie publishing wasn't a thing back then, because if I put a book up, it would have been terrible. So I'm glad I had to go through the traditional model, and I had to write as many books as I did for Love Inspired. So yeah, I think that, having to do that, because now I have the rhythm, there's a rhythm to it and there's a feel to it, and kind of writing, and when, oh gosh, I need to kill somebody now, or oh gosh, or oh, there needs to be a kiss, or oh, there needs to be, you just have that feel for it, even though it's a longer book and we can really explore a lot more complex plots and go deeper into the characters. It's still that same rhythm that I had that we have when we write romantic suspense in the shorter novels, because they're just tighter and more concise. But with the longer one, you just kind of an accordion, you take that and you just spread it out.
I love that.
Good. That's what I was kind of wondering. Yeah, thank you. You kind of confirmed what I was suspecting. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here. We have had a great time talking to you. We are so excited about Cold Out. Show us the cover again, Cold Light of Day, you guys. It's an amazing book. Go get a copy of it. You will not be sorry. And Elizabeth, we hope to see you again soon. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, guys.